person tell me they were probably going to be 10 to 15 minutes late. So we'll go ahead and get started. And thank you all again for coming back to the second meeting of the ATCP 82 Rural Revision Advisory Committee. As is required by state law, this was posted as a public meeting, and the public meeting notice, I did check, was up and available. So that we met that requirement. And unless there are items that folks want to bring up, I would suggest we go right back into discussing the document. Hearing nothing. Okay, so hopefully on your screen, you should be seeing the ATCP 82 working document that we're working on. And we are currently in ATCP 8208, which is the cleaning and sanitizing of bulk milk tankers. And we had gotten through sub item 3, where the last decision we made last meeting was that we decided that thoroughly cleaning all of the exterior surfaces of a bulk milk tanker is not a food safety issue and should not be a mandate. So now we start getting into where some of the rubber is going to meet the road here in cleaning documentation. And I see Brandon joined us. Perfect timing, Brandon.
Great. Sorry about that.
Nope, that's quite all right, because this is where we're going to start talking about the documentation needed to show that a bulk milk tanker has been cleaned. And right now, our current rule says that the bulk milk tanker must have a cleaning tag attached to it that includes all of the following information. And I recognize with new technologies, there might be another way to do this. So let's talk about, I think I talked about this the last meeting, but I'll talk about it again. Wanting to move our rules from saying you must have a tag to saying you must be able to provide this information, which would call our ends. And then identify what things, what guidelines need to be followed to provide that information. Things like the information must be readily accessible to the regulatory agency. The information must not be able to be altered in any way once it is recorded. Just those kinds of things. So I'll stop talking and ask for thoughts here.
Laura, last time we talked about, I think it was Lee from across the pond used the word evidence, and I really think that that was the correct wording. That's where I'll start my commentary. Thank you. Would it be unless there is evidence that includes all of the following information? I mean, is it that simple?
Thoughts from the committee? Andy, Mick?
Yeah, Yep,
Tony,
yep.
you all work with this
I-
every day.
I know.
Too.
I know. And this is Andy. I'm trying to, in my mind, envision a tanker coming into our facility without a tag. I think if we use, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, industry can go above and beyond requirements. I mean, Grassland could have a requirement saying that they must provide a tag. So if there's other facilities that don't want to use a tag, I think you could use the word or, or evidence, whether it's a tag or evidence. And if industry wanted to say that we wanted a tag, I mean, we just make that part of our requirements coming into our facility that you got to have a tag. And whether that's something that's printed out or whatever, I'm struggling trying to find, in my mind, figure out how we're going to provide that information electronically in an audit, whether it's the state or the IMS, showing that tanker was met the requirements, unless we have something physical that we can show them. That's where my struggle is on it. But if it's something that we want to include as an or, I think if other factories can document that and have it electronically available to regulatory, then and it meets that requirement, I guess that's up to them. I mean, and maybe that's something we can, as far as our facility, we can look at doing. We're continually looking at going paperless. We scan a lot of our documents and put them in a file, but I guess I just struggle with that a little bit on how that would all work.
I am. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Laura.
As regulatory, I can attest to, we have some farms now that have their bulk tank recording charts, recording directly to computer, which is then uploaded to the cloud. And so far, we have been able to access that information. Some of the farms will leave us a computer with instructions on how to access their data from the computer. Others have totally uploaded it to the cloud, and we can go on our phones anywhere and look up how a particular farm's bulk tank is operating, what temperature it's holding at that given time. So it is doable. The question is it feasible when we start getting into, Andy, your neck of the woods and further north, to upload things to the cloud? And Brandon, maybe you can speak to some of that.
Yeah, what I was just going to say is Andy, this can be a conversation that you and I could have offline, off this call, but maybe I should just have it right now. So I am working with DATCP and Cedar Grove Cheese, and we are bringing the short version of it is digitization of the records. So having a QR code on the tank that you are tracking the events of the tank, that is backed up by blockchain, so it's immutable. It's a situation where all you'd have to do in theory, and what we're proving out, is scan the tank, and you'd have all the evidence where it was washed by the individual person who washed it, who logged into the iOS or Android device to log the type of wash, prior products, seals used, those sorts of things. So where I'm thinking we should push to in this world is to just make sure that we can include, from the legislative side, that we can include something other than paper, because paper is just as faulty as anything else. Whereas I do feel a better process is using technology today. Obviously, there are the hurdles to get over to make that be sound for the state and any specific processor such as Grassland and yourself. One of the things I was thinking with putting in, and I guess I'm curious, Laura, the way that the state looks at this, if you could provide, is I feel like evidence would be the higher order of things. So I'm just wondering is if we could say bulk milk tanker, if there is evidence, and then you could put such as digital wash tag, wash paperwork, just to give some example. I don't know. I mean, I think it's fine as is. I guess I just am thinking of the order of things, and I feel like evidence covers a wash tag, paperwork, digital, any of those things, but I don't know.
Yeah, and I'm thinking right now, because we're kind of in a bridge between exclusively paper to starting to incorporate more digital, I think I'm more comfortable with including the old technology specifically, and then opening the door for new technology. Tony, Nick, Helen.
Brandon,
thoughts?
when you were talking, Brandon, about doing what your trial is at Cedar Grove, where you're putting the identification on the tanker, where are you putting that at in order, where it doesn't wear out or get damaged? Or, I mean, can you elaborate on that a little bit more?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the tank owner, whoever owns the tank, would be responsible for that QR code. Our plan, obviously the long range plan, I've been talking with Wabash, Tremcar, the tank manufacturers, and saying we need a laser etched QR code in the back of the stainless, in both bulkheads, front and back. That way, if the trailer's parked in your lot and you're at the plant and you want to go see what's on that trailer, you just go scan that QR code and you are able to see the events that you need to know to make your decision of what to do with it. In the interim, this is as simple as what we're doing in our trial is, Avery labels and then a piece of clear tape over it right by the back valve.
Okay.
And obviously that QR code is linked to the VIN number and any of the information about that trailer that's pertinent. Does it have 3A, the right polish, the right valves configuration setup?
Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
So in the world of digital, right? So I can tell you from Belgioso perspective, we already have QR codes on all of our bulk tanks, and our haulers have iPads. They scan the code, then they can enter in their weight and temperature and so forth. When they come back to the plant, we can link it up and download it, and it's on our server. From a cybersecurity perspective, I know everybody loves the cloud, but I think in the back of all of our minds, right, that's a scary concept of in the world we live in right now with, ransomware and all that kind of stuff. I kind of agree with Andy, right? If I'm an intake person, I want to see a wash tag. It's faster for me. I grab the wash tag, I look at the date, the sanitizer, the seals, my information's there, instantaneously. I don't have to go searching on a computer or maybe calling the plant for verification and then proof. I think on the digital side, right, we can be certainly open to it, but I think we have a long way to go as to perfecting that. And I think, paper is always a good backup, right? If you have a power outage and you're running on a generator, what's up and running. If the server's down, you may not have access to that information.
Yeah, those are, oh, sorry.
And we're not here to talk about, personal corporate preferences. What we're here to do, and I heard you say this, Helen, is you're open to it. If someone else wants to try it, what we're looking to do here is write the rule so that it still protects product safety, but opens the door for the new technology.
Absolutely, I agree. I think both, right?
Mhm.
Digital and paper should be an option.
Yep.
And I totally agree with that too, and that's why if we're gonna write that into the rule, if we use the word or, that opens up that door for this technology, but it also leaves in place the current way that it's being used. So
Okay. So sounds like we're okay with the verbiage for the opening of 4A. Now, the question is, the information that we're requiring, is that adequate information? Is is anybody out there going, I really wish I had more than this?
I
Or-
think,
Go ahead.
don't they, I was just gonna say, I don't see the type of, I think the ones that I remember from my history of operating our receiving station was that we had the type of sanitizer listed on there, and I don't know if that's common, but that's the only thing I don't see on there.
Yeah, I don't think that's a requirement, but I
Okay.
think a lot of places include it.
Okay. I just
This
going
is-
off my past history. Yep.
This is Lynn from Grande. So we put the seal numbers on the wash tag, and I think most plants are doing that. And I kind of think that would be a good idea to require the seals to be put on there.
Yeah, I agree. I missed that. I think they should, the security seals.
this is Andy from.
And then in that, Lynn, do you differentiate between top and rear to make sure they're clear on them both?
We do. On ours, we have a place that says top, back, and then we have a place for other for tankers
Okay.
that have a probe seal.
I'll ask one question there, which is, what about, there are some facilities that have talked about, I don't know if they've switched to this, using padlocks.
So from my experience, when they were picking up milk and delivering them, the ones that did use padlocks, they still wrote the padlock, whatever was the identifying number for that lock. So I still think, I mean, this as well, like I feel like it should be open to not constrict anything anywhere, because there are people, like, same thing, there are people that are making digital seals, like ADM's doing some technology with that. So I don't know that we want to restrict anything, but I think it would be, yeah, it would be prudent or pertinent to have something in here about.
So I added some verbiage there. I don't know how long it'll take to upload.
I think on our wash tags, we might have last product hauled. Does anybody else have that on their wash tags?
We don't, only because if it's washed correctly, then we're not sure if that's a concern. I don't know. I mean, one thing I do want to bring up though was, is there a difference between a grade A wash and a non-grade A wash? I mean, maybe that's something that needs to be addressed too.
Well, there's also an IMS grade A and IMS certified. I think I can just say in the food grade world, which isn't in this situation, it's more wash paperwork than wash tags, and some facilities require 3 prior products. Some require 1 prior product. I choose to believe, like Andy does, that if you're saying anything more than 1 or whatever you're saying more, you're actually like discrediting the tank wash, because like if we believe that the tank wash does the job it's supposed to do, then it really shouldn't matter.
I would agree with that as well.
Okay, so there was the question about grade A washes. That is item 6 in here, where we talk about grade A bulk tank cleaning facilities. That's never been specifically required on the tag that you identified that the facility was a grade A or grade A IMS listed tank wash. It was always deemed to be incumbent upon the receiving plant to look up the identity of the location of the facility where the tanker was cleaned to determine if that facility meets the standards they need, either IMS listed or at least grade A.
And that's probably suffice in my line of thinking.
So if you look back at number 3, name and location of facility where bulk tanker was cleaned and sanitized, and the facility's grade A permit number, wouldn't that cover it?
I agree. Yep, correct.
Yeah, and this part of the rule covers it, because if it's not a grade A facility, it just says, you know, if you're grade A, you need to record your grade A permit number. What we have though is we have some of those non grade A facilities that the wash part of them is approved under another IMS list as a grade A bulk milk tank wash facility. Okay, the identity of seals or other devices used to secure.
Is there anybody, Laura, in the state of Wisconsin that still, are they allowed to get in a tanker and wash it by hand and sanitize it by hand? Or is that no longer allowed?
That is not allowed under the grade A program.
Okay,
believe-
that's what I thought. I just wanted to know.
Yeah. I believe there might be some grade B places that still do that, but more of the issue rather than us is OSHA and what you
Yeah.
have to go through.
Well, yeah,
I know.
exactly.
I know I was the small person in the plant, so I got to go in and do that stuff on occasion. It's no fun when they look at you and go, you can stand up in the tanker. Okay, so Andy suggested a modification to say used to secure all access points to the vessel.
Could you say that again? I'm not sure.
Okay, so we added the item 5, which said that somewhere either on the tag or in the electronic record, we need the identity of the seals or other devices used to secure all access points to the vessel. So I know this one will bring up some conversation when we go to public hearing, because there will probably be some facilities that go, we've never recorded these seals numbers in the past. So I ask, especially those of you who are committee members, be prepared to speak to why you believe this is important.
Well, I think one of the reasons it's important is, is they do that anyhow. I mean, if you get a tanker in our facility and the security or the seals don't match, you don't you got to start asking questions. So it just, to me, it's just another way of securing that what's being done is being done properly.
Right. Yeah. But I know in
Yeah.
Wisconsin, we have some smaller facilities that pick up 3 farms.
Yep.
They use their own truck and they don't ever send that truck anywhere else. And it's like, why do I need to do that kind of thing? So we just need to be prepared to speak to it.
Okay.
Are those facilities grade A, Laura, or can they, I mean, obviously this is a grade A. This is a grade A document, correct? I mean,
No,
can they, this is all milk.
this is all milk.
Okay,
So,
all right. Yep.
yeah. So, like I said in item 3, it says, the facility's grade A permit number, if any, because this applies to everyone. Everyone who's hauling milk, we want milk to be protected in this way, even if it's going into cheese or other manufactured products.
I think it's a legitimate food safety concern. So yeah, I'll be prepared to give my opinion on that.
Laura, are you saying there's some plants that don't even put on seals at all? Or
Oh,
just
they
that
put
the,
on seals. They're required to put on seals. What I'm saying is they don't record the seal identification.
okay,
And they may not even have a method to record the seal identification. They might still be using old, they're not lead anymore. They're white metal. Pull the wire through the white metal, crimp it, and we're done.
and there's no number on that. There's nothing on there that. Yeah.
Correct. Yep.
I still think it's a food safety issue, but
Yep. I agree. Just it goes better in hearing if it comes not just from me, because they just look at me and go, well, you don't understand. And it's like, excuse me, I spent some time in the dairy industry. I understand that, some of this is annoying to have to write down seal numbers, but yes, it's a food safety item.
I would just agree with everyone else that's just the progression of things. I think it's a necessary thing. If they ever receive anything from any other place in that plant, they should be recording these things. I don't think there's any industry in any of the food stuff that we do, dairy or whatever, that would not record seal numbers. So I think they are the exception. So
yeah. Okay, so are we comfortable with the 5 items? Is that what we believe needs to be on a tag or some type of information? So moving on to item B, the bulk milk tanker shall have a tag. Let's see, what language did I use above? So for item B, I added, so item B now reads, the bulk milk tanker shall have a tag or other sealing device attached as required under paren A to the outlet valve or inside the pump cabinet of the tanker. No person may remove the tag or seal except as provided under the next paragraph under paren C.
I think it should be a bulk milk tanker shall have a tag attached or other evidence. Shall have a tag attached or other evidence of, or other evidence of whatever's on a tag. shall have a tag attached or other evidence.
You're saying it's not about seals.
Right, I don't, is that one about seals or is that one
Yeah.
about the,
The information, yeah,
okay.
okay, yeah, so that matches the language we used above.
So should it specify wash tag and
Wash evidence, yeah,
Cleaning
Well-
tag,
have a, yeah. So in between other and evidence, should it be, because this is what we're working on with you, Laura, in the thing, should it be in between other and evidence, attached, or, oh, I was gonna say, or other available, readily available evidence, or, you know, like, whatever.
actually, I don't think we need the readily available because I believe somewhere else in this rule, it says all records must be readily available.
Okay, great. Great.
Just a question, Laura, and to the group. When you say tanker or other evidence, do we want it to be that specific or should it say and or? I'm just asking the question. Does it have to be one or the other, or if somebody wanted to provide both? I'm just wondering.
Well, we're only going to require one. If
Okay, yeah,
folks choose to have more than one, they can have more than one, but we're only going to require one. You
One,
need to
okay,
have one
that's-
or the other.
okay, that, I was just making sure.
Yep, thanks for asking.
So Laura,
Or-
B seems to be the where is it regulation,
Yep,
right? And do you think we've gotten that with the other evidence? Does that mean, should we say where that other evidence should be, or or is it nice that we don't, which means it could be anywhere?
That's great. I think it should have somewhere in there proximity of the evidence. Inside the pump cabinet of the tanker, shall have a cleaning tank attached. I mean, can you say within arm's reach, or, I mean, like, what, you know, how do we? Within arm's reach of the same location, you know, because we're saying the outlet valve or inside the pump cabinet of the tanker, cleaning tag is used.
Could you word it as being readily
Ooh.
available? You know? I mean, that leaves it. You know, the information of the tank has to be readily available.
I like what you're doing there. Yeah, that's good.
okay. For those of you who can't see the screen, what I did with item B was changed it to, if a cleaning tag is used, the bulk milk tanker shall have the cleaning tag attached as required under paren A to the outlet valve or inside the pump cabinet of the tanker. No person may remove the tag except under paren C. Other forms of evidence must be readily accessible.
I like that.
Yep, very good.
Yeah, I agree.
And like I said, last meeting, don't worry if, tomorrow morning at 2:00 you wake up and go, no, we're going to come back and look at all of this language again. So item C, whenever the bulk milk tanker operator or bulk milk tanker cleaning facility employee cleans and sanitizes a bulk milk tanker, the last cleaning tag attached to the bulk milk tanker under this subsection shall be removed before attaching a new tag. The removed tag shall be retained for at least 15 days at the location where the bulk milk tanker was cleaned and sanitized. This one's going to be fun.
Laura, I'm just wondering, like, to where you put in B at the end, other forms of evidence must be readily accessible. Should we just add to the end of that, or should it be its own? Well, okay, so other forms of evidence must be readily accessible for a period no shorter than 15 days, or for at least 15 days, or for 3 years, whatever. Because in the digital situation, there is nothing to remove. That we just need access. The state and the location need access to that information for a period of time defined by whatever length.
I really think B and C are an apple and an orange, though. I think B is just where you're gonna find the evidence. C is how long you're gonna store it. I don't think you should mix the two things.
Okay, so what I did was I added to that second sentence of paren B, other forms of evidence must be readily accessible and must be retained as provided under paren C. So that if we have to change paren C, B just refers to it. We don't have to worry about changing two different paragraphs.
I like it.
True. Yeah, you're referring to C for both cases. Yeah, it makes sense.
And that way, I'll ask this question because in my mind it does this, but I want to make sure I'm thinking right. That way, it also just says that the other forms of evidence just need to follow the retention schedule. We don't have to worry about the removal of the tag and putting the new tag on. It just says other forms of evidence must be retained based on paren C. And it skips over that removal and putting the new one on.
Does that sentence that you have highlighted there then also bring into effect what we changed up on number 5? We added the identity of the seal. So to me, if we're gonna retain them, if we need to retain the tag for 15 days, shouldn't we in turn also retain all the seals and everything for 15 days? They all go hand in hand. Or no?
But I would propose that once you perform an act in the dairy plant, the paper record is what we look for
Okay.
past that point. So, we don't ask you to retain your drug residue test strips. We just ask you to record what your drug residue test strips indicated, and those can be thrown away. I think the seals kind of fall in that same category of, yes, we verified the seals, we're throwing the seals away, we're keeping our paper record.
Okay. Just being devil's advocate.
Oh, no. And I'm willing to listen if someone else thinks I'm thinking wrong, because I have one perspective.
Hey, this is Tony. I have a question.
Yes.
If so, we have a lot of where we deliver one day to one plant and get a wash ticket, and then the next day that the hauler of that truck would say pick up 3 loads and go to a different plant, and then they usually just cross off an initial and write new tag numbers. or seal numbers, I mean. And then, but if it's digital, how are we going to record that on the wash ticket? Because the wash ticket usually has the date and time, you know, when the truck was washed, just so, you know, because it's got to be washed within 24 hours after you're starting to pick up milk. I just wondered how we're going to record the seals, you know, for the next 2 loads after that first load.
Laura, do you want me to just say what we're proposing? So what, that's great. So in the idea that we're proposing and rolling out at Cedar Grove, the name of our product is Vessi. So it's easier if I describe it that way. So Vessi, in Vessi, anyone who does one of the critical components to the tank, so this would be at a shipping place or a tank wash place or a receiving place, you would be logging in whatever it is you are doing as your own unique user ID. So the intake person would scan the QR code and say what it is they're doing. There's drop downs based on location. So you would be resealing with these new seal numbers. No data is lost. You're only adding to the chain of evidence for that trailer for its life.
So does that answer your question, Tony? Or you still, that question's out there?
No, that answers it. We're doing a similar thing where we're doing digital manifests
Mhm.
with different handlers and stuff. So it's just right now we enter in the seal numbers ourselves, you know, and then the wash date and time and everything. So then we can email it to the plants, you know, for the plants that don't have the capability of cloud, you know, retrieval.
Okay, so are we good with B where it stands right now? And then C will need to add something along these lines. Leaving the first sentence untouched whenever bulk milk tank operator or tank cleaning facility cleans, sanitizes the truck. The last cleaning tag attached to the tanker under this subsection shall be removed before attaching a new tag. The removed tag or other forms of evidence shall be retained for at least 15 days at the location where the bulk milk tanker was cleaned and sanitized.
I think that sounds good.
Others?
I kind of want to move back to Tony's point. Tony mentioned the seals, and when the tank doesn't get washed, but it goes back out again. I'm kind of going back up to 0.5.
Mhm.
Do we need to clarify the initial seals upon wash? Because I'm thinking about what Tony said. And that may make it hard if you're using the tanker multiple times, so you put on new seals and it goes back out with the same wash tag. Sorry
Is
if
that
I'm moving backwards, but.
Well,
That's
I'm just wondering if that's something we add to the end of the sentence, because in both situations, it would be fine. The identity of the seals or other devices used to secure all access points to the vessel. Something like, be it the initial, be it the initial loading or a transloading, or not a transloading, but a secondary sealing situation. How do we, yeah.
Yeah, if the seals are important initially, are these seals also important? Say you're sending a truck out to go pick up a second load.
Doesn't
They-
this come back to where once it was verified, you know, that everything met, that you have the information that it was washed and sanitized somewhere, and to have the actual tag from when that happened. I mean, you see where I'm going with that?
Yep.
I mean, we have a lot of haulers that pick up multiple loads, and when we write a new seal on that tag, I'm always thinking about what we call third-party milk that we get in. You know, if we take that information, verified that it was okay, but he's going to go now and pick up a second load and take it to a different facility. I'm sure our procedure is we take that tag and we write on our seals, put it back in the truck. But, you know, somewhere we have written down that we verified that everything met the requirements. It's just, we don't have that physical tag to be able to provide for regulatory when they want to see it. But I believe it suffices that we verified it and not actually, you know, because we've written down that we verified it, that we don't actually have that actual tag. We're scanning a lot of them documents. So once we've scanned it, we could take that tag, then write the new seals on it, put it back in the truck and let it go with that. But we have our verification that meets the requirements for regulatory when they come and want to see it. Does that make sense? Kind of.
It makes sense to me. Now I'll ask the question for the group. So are we comfortable with saying that what we're looking to verify is the cleaning of that tanker? And so the only seals we need the identity of are the ones that were used to secure the access point when the vessel was cleaned? Or is the group thinking we need to document every seal as this truck moves through its day?
We would definitely need to see seals. I mean, if that truck was coming back to us on a second load, we wouldn't accept it if the only seal numbers were from the original wash. We wouldn't accept it because there's obviously been, you know, them seals were broke and something was opened and they were resealed. So it's kind of along the same line as, I mean, we seal everything up when it goes out, but obviously you can't pick up milk unless you break that seal on the door in the back. So the haulers are writing the new seal for that door. I think it runs along that same premise that whenever a seal is broken, it's got to be documented and being, you know, there's got to be what we call a chain of ownership or whatever, that hauler is, you know, recognizing that a seal was broken, that he replaced it. And so you know, as far as, you know, in my opinion, anytime a seal is changed, it's got to be documented somewhere.
I agree with Andy.
I do too, but I think some of that subsequent documentation happens on the manifest. So I'm afraid that some of the wash tags could get really messy. So, I mean, if you are a commingled hauler and you go out and you break that back seal to put on the first stop, and I don't know if you seal it up again, but now you document that on the wash tag. And if you seal it before you go to the next farm and then you document it again, you could get an awful lot of seals on there.
Right,
Where
but would that still meet the standard? Because we're saying there is a cleaning tag or other evidence that includes the following information. And so if you've got a manifest that includes the identities of those other seals, you've got other evidence.
I think each individual plant could make that call. I think as far as our plant, we like to write it on the wash tag just because that's where we want to see it all. So when they replace a seal, we only want a single line through the one that was taken off. And then, I mean, I've seen wash tags where they flip it over and sometimes there's 5-6 different seal numbers where they've, you know, it shows the whole chain of events as it went down, and it's pretty easy to see. And I think in a digital world, you would be able to see it, like you say, you can add information, you know, if there's something that says seal removed, seal replaced with this seal. I mean, ultimately you could make that as long as you want, and then the tank just needs to be washed within, that 24-hour period or end of days use or however.
Is there anybody on the call that represents the kind of plant that's picking up 6 farms on a tanker? Are we getting all the perspectives?
Yep.
I can just say, like, when we did have the haulers come in that were picking up 15 loads or whatever, that was the situation where they would have a lock. And they wrote that lock serial number on the back. They would just lock it in between farms, so you weren't changing per se a seal. But in the situation where there was a resealing event, I agree with Andy and his way. It was draw a single line through the seals, put the new seals on it somewhere that it's legible, and go forward.
Ellen, you were going to speak up.
So I guess I look at this 2 different ways, right? So at the end of the day, right, at the end of each day's use, a tanker has to be washed. So we do the wash tag, right? We seal all ports, top, bottom. The tanker goes back, sits in the hauler's driveway, right, till he starts his next route at whatever. The seals are on there to make sure that no one has tampered with the tanker, right, before it's under the custody of the hauler. So if I'm a driver, right, a hauler, when I get to my first stop, I break the seal, right? I go pick up my 3 stops, 6 stops, whatever it is. I reseal the truck and I head back into the dairy plant. I get to the plant, top seal is verified, bottom seal is verified, right? You go through your procedure. But unless that hauler's really stopping, I mean, he's in I guess my opinion, right? The milk and the tanker's under his custody, right? He's the one that he's driving. No one, no one's tampering with the truck as he's going on his route. We've told our haulers, right, if you're gonna stop at a truck stop, right, and grab something to eat, we want the truck sealed up so you can see that no one tampered with it, why it was not under your control or custody. It's our tankers are not sealed between pickups. They're sealed at the end of the load, and then after the first drop off, if you will, and then as they go back out to their next route, and then at the end of the day, after they're washed, and the seal numbers are written on the wash tag.
Okay.
We follow that same procedure. I think one thing we do not allow though is the locks, just because we don't know who might have a key for it. I mean, all of our seals are a one-time use, and I guess that's up to the facility, but in our realm of thinking is it just eliminates one less scenario of something that can get taken off and put back on and nobody knows what happened in between.
So are we okay with the language in question in 4 sub A 1 through 5? Lynn, you brought up the initial R. Are you okay with it just saying the identity of the seals? Or do you think it still needs clarification?
I guess it's okay. It has not been our practice to document the back seal being broken on the wash tag. We do that on the paperwork. So I guess that's my only question. Is that going to be a change that we want to see all seals documented on the wash tag with the way we have it worded?
No, because we have up in the A or other evidence. So if it's on your manifest, that's other evidence.
Okay. Then I'm good.
So, as we go through and we do this, right, these are the rules that at a minimum, right, the state says that we need to follow. As a company, you're certainly more than willing, or you can do more, right?
Correct.
So I think it's
Yes.
important to keep in mind that this is the minimum that the state wants to see and actually regulate. As a company, you can certainly do more to provide your assurances based on the risk that you have assigned to each one of your plant activities.
I totally
Yeah.
agree.
And here's a layman's question. Sorry to interrupt. Does a manifest also have 1 through 5? Are you generally capturing that in a manifest?
We don't capture the cleaning date and time on the manifest. The
So
seals.
the manifest
are.
might not be a 1-for-1 acceptable alternative then.
Right. The manifest cannot replace the cleaning tag unless they add that cleaning and sanitizing and facility number and all of that to the manifest. And most folks, their manifests are busy enough.
But as a combination, you could have all of that information between the two under other evidence, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah. But I've had it, where I've asked, show me your information and I'll have 3-4 pieces of documentation just following that truck through its day.
Okay. As long as the combination can suffice, that's great.
Yep. So I believe we were on item D. Whenever the bulk milk tank operator or cleaning facility employee cleans and sanitizes a direct ship tanker, the operator or employee shall apply a seal to each access port. I don't know that that needs to change at all.
Agreed.
Yep, that's good. Not to back up a little bit, but just for the wording on C, the last sentence says that the removed tag shall be retained for at least 15 days at the location where the bulk milk tanker was cleaned and sanitized. I mean, we have several trucks that were cleaned and sanitized somewhere else. Is that a verbiage thing that, I mean, should it, I'm just playing devil's advocate here. Should it just say it should be removed and retained where it was unloaded as well? I mean, I'm just trying to look at that verbiage and understand. Not all trucks are gonna deliver where they were cleaned and sanitized. Or am I reading it wrong?
No, you're reading it right. I'm just trying to think of the different words we can use. Remove.
Why wouldn't it just be at the location where the bulk milk tanker was unloaded?
Because it does need to stay with the truck until it's next cleaned and sanitized. So if you have a truck that gets unloaded and then goes out to pick up something else before the 24 hours are up, that cleaning tag needs to follow that truck through its 24 hours. So I'm thinking of, needs to be retained for at least 15 days at the location where the bulk milk tanker was next cleaned and sanitized, or at, yeah.
Yeah, no, you're on the right track. The way I'm thinking is, once you wash that truck, you're creating a new, you're starting over with the evidence. So, but
Yep.
the old evidence is what we're looking at retaining for 15 days.
Right.
Or what about verbiage of where the bulk milk tanker has its next cleaning and sanitizing?
Thoughts?
I'm just thinking in this situation, so, and maybe this is me just not understanding, so maybe I should be quiet. But in the situation where a hauler is going to pick up more milk and doesn't need it washed, they could communicate that to the plant. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Yep.
Yeah. I was only thinking of the situation that I was envisioning Andy said, whereas a milk plant unloads a truck, but they're not where it gets washed, it goes somewhere else and gets washed. And in that situation, I think it should stay with the place where the milk was unloaded, but I see what you're saying. Yeah, I don't have any comment then.
Okay, we have been at this an hour and we've gotten through one paragraph, but I knew these ones were going to be tougher. Okay, so we get into paragraph 6, which talks about the bulk milk tanker cleaning facility. No person may operate a bulk milk tanker cleaning facility to clean grade A bulk milk tankers unless the person holds a valid grade A permit from the department for that facility. Permit is not transferable. Now, this is where we get into the only grade A stuff again. Person shall apply for a grade A permit under paren A on the form provided by the department. The application shall include the name, address, telephone number, address of the cleaning facility, including the street address and post office and county, and other information that the department reasonably requires for purposes of issuing a grade A permit. Any issues so far?
Laura, this is probably a stupid question, but so the 54 permitted wash stations, are you considering them a grade A permitted facility or not?
Yes, they are a grade A bulk milk tank wash facility. So the only thing they can do in the grade A program is wash.
So they would fall into this?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Laura, is there a reason those 1, 2, and 3 are needed in B? Can you just say on a form provided by the department?
I don't know. I'll have to ask our rules expert if there's a reason that we have to spell this stuff out in rule. There might be a reason we have to spell stuff out in rule because I know when we've gotten into dealing with some of the sovereign citizen people that they've said if it's not in rule, I don't have to provide it to you. And it's like, well, it's really kind of hard to find your location if you don't provide me an address.
Okay, that could be
Laura?
a reason.
Yes.
So for B there, right, a
Mhm.
person shall apply for a grade A permit under Prin A on an application provided by the department. If you use the word application, right, you need to fill out the mailing address, the physical location, all that information is already requested and on that form. So then do you need to, reiterate it here? Because you could update your applications as needed and it would still contain all this information.
Okay. So I've got that marked as Andrea Northwood is our rules guru. So I will ask her if this is required. based on the fact that I see it in all of our rules, I'm thinking there's something that says we have to spell this out. Okay. Item C, the department shall grant or deny within 40 days after the department receives a completed application. And in order for the bulk milk tank and cleaning facility to stay, to hold that valid permit, they have to do a semi-annual inspection by the department. Anything on that paragraph? Now we're going to get into another tough one, and this one we might want to carry over until the next meeting, since none of our inline sampler folks could be on this call, but we can at least start on it. But I will make a note. If milk from a grade A or grade B farm violates any standard under 6570 on any single test, milk from that farm shall be collected at least once every 2 days until a subsequent test shows that the milk from that dairy farm complies with the standard. Now, ATCP 65 70 says that if you have a high plate count, that you cannot extend the frequency of pickup. You have to pick up the milk from that farm every 2 days. Now, the thing that confuses me about 6570 is it also says if the somatic cell exceeds standards. And so I question, do we really need to pick up the milk every 2 days if the somatic cell is outside of acceptable ranges?
This is Andy, I'll comment on that. I think obviously more frequent pickups is not going to help change the cell count, but it provides documentation that the guy's trying to lower his cell count.
Okay.
You know, you're not going to get a sample and, every 4 days or whatever. You're not, it's not showing, I don't know, I'm struggling with my words a little, but it's not showing, you're not collecting data showing that he's trying, unless, of course, a field man goes out and pulls a sample in between pickups and can provide that. But the pickup sample is going to show that he's trying to get it down. So I guess my personal opinion is that I wouldn't change it. I mean, if he's having trouble with his cell count like that, he probably wants to know if what he's doing is working or not, sooner than later as well. So I don't think it's a big deal that, obviously the science isn't going to show that picking up more often is going to change it, but if he's aware of it and he's trying some things, picking it up more often is going to help him provide information that it's working or not. So I don't think it's a big deal to leave it.
Other thoughts? And so following along the concept up here of every 2 days, it is the dairy plant operator's responsibility to notify the farm and the hauler whenever the milk from that farm must be collected more frequently than they're more than every 2-day pickup. And then the last sentence of that line says that no dairy plant operator may receive milk collected in violation of paren A. So to be clear, what that means is if you have a farm that has a high plate count and should be on once every 2-day pickup, and it was not picked up every 2 days, but was picked up every 3rd day, the dairy plant then is in violation of this rule.
Is there a lot of milk that only gets picked up every 3 days?
No. No, there's very little that's picked up every 3 days. I would say most of what I see that is being picked up every 3rd or 4th day is canned milk in the winter. They're not going to let canned milk sit 3-4 days in the summer, but in the winter, you might see canned milk go 3-4 days.
So then this would, having this rule of 2 days would be forcing those can producers to be picked up every 2 days in the winter, potentially, right?
Correct. Yes.
Is that a hardship? I mean, I just don't have any knowledge of this. So do we feel like it would be it's a hardship for some of them?
I don't think it's a hardship. I think it just it makes the farm meet the standards. If they're not meeting the standards, I mean, it can be done, but if the farm's not meeting the standards and he has to get picked up more frequent, I mean, it forces the farm to try to meet the standards, do a better job of cooling or cleaning and all that kind of stuff. So I wouldn't go under the hardship thing. I think it just helps the plant make sure that the farms are doing everything they can to meet the standards.
So if they're out of standard on plate count, plate count can be affected by that 3-day pickup, right? But I think to Laura's point, the cell count not really going to be affected by 2-day pickup versus 3, although we have to test official cell counts within 3 days of pickup too, right?
Yes. Unless you preserve the samples.
Yeah, I guess I can see that the plate count is definitely should be 2 days, but I guess I agree with Laura, like cell count, does it matter whether it's 2 days or 3 days? From a food safety standpoint, I'm guessing it doesn't really matter.
But I think we need to take a look at exactly what 65.70 addresses. If it addresses somatic cell and plate count in the same rule, how do you pick one over the other?
Well, what we can do is say if a grade A or grade B dairy farm violates a standard under statute ATCP 6570 A2, which would specify bacteria count, because somatic cell count is A4.
I'm okay with that if that's what we want to do.
Well, the other thing to keep in mind is for the grade B farmers, which are the ones that more likely are going to be picked up every 3 to 4 days, their bacteria count is 300,000. But the somatic cell count is the same for A and B. Somatic cell count has 750 per mil for both A and B. So we can mull this one over because, as I said, we're going to start at 8210 next meeting, and hopefully we can have the inline sampler folks here. So then we get into one of the sections that's going to change radically. Supplies required for milk collection and sampling. A bulk milk weigher and sampler who collects milk in bulk shall have the following supplies available. And adequate supply of sample containers, I believe that applies whether you're using an inline sampler or a dipper. Any concerns about 2A? Two B is where things get fun, because if you're using an inline sampler, you do not need a sample dipper.
Could you change that wordage to a sampling device? And then that creates more opportunity for the inline sampling.
One thought that ran through my mind was B and C both only apply to dippers. Do we make just a subsection that says if you are sampling from I don't want to call it a traditional bulk tank, but have some definition of if you are collecting from a bulk tank where you can pull the sample from the top of the bulk tank in the milk house. You need a sample dipper and you need a sanitizing solution. If you are using an inline sampler, you need the equipment as outlined by the manufacturer of the inline sampler.
Instead of using bulk tank, could you use the word vessel maybe? To address the samples that are being taken at the intake from direct load tankers.
There are also sample straws, and I know that probably haulers don't use them much, but as field reps go out maybe to collect an official sample, we use straws that are already sanitary. Which would, if you change that to a sampling device, it would fit, but the straws, then we don't have to sanitize them. They're packaged sterilely.
Okay. So what I did here, this is going to take some work. Sample device to collect samples under 8212. If using a sample dipper, it shall be kept in a sample dipper well designed for that purpose. And the sample dipper well shall contain a sanitizing solution of not less than 100 parts per million or more than 200 parts per million chlorine or equivalent. Bulk milkware samplers shall carry a sanitizer solution test kit to test the strength of the sanitizing solution. And then we need to include something. Are all sampling straws always, do they always come pre-sterilized? Or can you buy reusable sampling straws?
I've never seen ones you can reuse. They come in a tube. The
Mhm.
plastic ones that we use, I've never seen reusable ones.
Laura, doesn't this make you just want to say any sampling device should be kept clean and sanitized, period? Not have any of this.
Yeah. And that's kind of what I'm going to do here. So I added a 4. If using automatic sampling device, it shall be used and maintained according to manufacturer instructions.
Could put 1 and 2 together.
This paragraph's really talking about the supplies we need, though also should you add in there supplies needed according to manufacturer's instructions also?
All right.
Tony, I have a question about that.
Okay. So if using an automatic sampling device, the bulk milkware and sampler shall have the supplies needed as directed by the manufacturer's instructions.
This is Tony. I have a question about that.
Yes.
So, I mean, shouldn't we leave it in there that that has to have the dipper with sanitizing solution? You know, because if the inline sanitizer or the inline sampler failed, then there wouldn't be a way to sample. You know, I mean, there's always chances of things failing, or it's good to have that backup, you know, manual.
Well, the issue we're running into is we're starting to talk about silos that cannot be sampled, or direct ship loads. And so the bulk milk weigher and sampler who picks up the milk may not be able to sample at all if the inline sampler isn't working. And then they will have to go to the plant, and the plant will have to sample the tank when it gets there. So I don't know that having the dipper as a backup is something that we want to mandate, because as we move into these newer technologies, we're going to require them to have a piece of equipment that they can never use.
So in that case, if you had a load that was bad and you weren't able to find out which, you know, because usually you have the farm samples and you could see which farm caused that load to be bad, then that farm would have to, you know, be cleared again before it could be picked up. But now we don't know. I mean, how do we find out which farm? You know, because sometimes we have 11 farms. It's kind of hard to go out and sample every farm before we can pick up that load again.
Yes.
So Tony, it sounds like you're talking about an inline sampler that would be installed on a truck. Like, so you're picking up commingled samples and it's an inline sampler installed on the truck. Is that kind of what you're talking about?
Yep. Yeah, I'm not talking on the farm inline sample. I'm talking like the Piper system where they have it
Yeah.
mounted in a truck.
Yeah,
We're
and
picking up multiple.
I haven't looked at that like on a truck, but I'm just assuming that the hauler driving the truck, as he starts pumping that milk on, he has to ensure that that sample is being taken appropriately. And that if he sees he is not getting a sample as he starts pumping on, that he would be required to stop somehow to make sure that he is getting that sample.
Right. But then we'd run into hardship problems where we can't get that milk picked up, and it's you know, where like a lot of haulers, they do a lot of miles where they can't just run back and get a different truck with a different. I was just wondering if we kept the manual dipper on there, they're, you know, just like with electronic, I mean, not to change the subject, but like electronic logs for haulers, they have to have a backup, you know, so if that fails, they have to be able to go, you know, I don't know.
Yeah. The issue I'm having here is walking the line between what do we mandate versus what is good operating practice. And for me, from the regulatory side, I'm looking at it and saying, all I can mandate is that they have a sampling device. I don't know that I can say that if you've got an automatic sampling device, you still need the dipper as a backup.
So I'd like to ask a question to those who have online sampling devices on a truck, right? If you're not picking up a full load, why would you even use that and not pick up or not sample individual farms through the bulk tank? So you can, do all your procedures, because obviously if the milk is spoiled, you don't even want to put it on the truck.
So I don't know that there are any truck mounted samplers in this state at this time. I've seen them in operation in other states and other countries. What they do is one of the advantages of the inline truck mounted samplers is the hauler does not have to wait for the tank to agitate before they start pulling their sample. Because the sampler is supposed to pull a small draw through the entire pumping of that load from that farm. And so what they normally do to check the milk before they start loading is they will do a short draw, pull some sample in, pull that into a vial and do their sniff test there. It's a radical shift from how we do things because we are so used to going and turning on the agitator, looking at the milk, smelling the milk. And
So from a regulatory perspective, then, if I'm a hauler and I pick up 6 farms, right, and I use this inline sampler, and then I get to the dairy plant and they say, no, I refuse this load, right, because the acidity shows you have spoiled milk in your truck. Who pays the farms and who disposes of the milk then?
that's something we're going to have to discuss.
Wow.
And I'd take that one step further. If you have 6 stops on a load and you have an antibiotic load, now you've got, are you really getting a representative sample from that inline sampler? Now you're going to have 2 guys that are going to show up positive, and you got to clear both of them, and maybe it was only one of them. There's a lot of questions, I think, for that.
On that topic, I can speak to New York has had very good success with the truck mounted inline samplers that they have been using, clearing the lines between farmers so that one farmer's milk does not get contaminated with another farmer's milk.
I think one of the big selling points of the inline samplers for these trucks is eliminating shrink. You take all the people factor of measuring that milk out, and it's good for the plants. You probably eliminate a lot of shrink.
So, as I said, we're going to come back to this one next meeting, but for B right now, do we think we've got at least a base to cover the different types of sampling devices that might be used to collect a sample?
I think it's a really good start.
Okay, let's look at the other equipment. An insulated carrying case with rack to hold the samples while the carrying case shall comply with 8212. We'll get to that in a bit. A dial or digital thermometer calibrated for accuracy against a thermometer traceable to NIST. Certified thermometer at least every 6 months, accurate to plus or minus 2 degrees Fahrenheit, that can be used to check the accuracy of the farm bulk tank indicating thermometers. This is another one that I am not sure how we are going to handle this if we have a silo that the hauler cannot access in any way. Then how do you check the temperature of the silo?
Well, I think if we
Don't-
go, if we go up to the above, it says that they're available, not necessarily that you have to use them. You know, if a silo is required to have a temperature chart recorder of some sort, whether it's electronic or a paper one, that they can use, that's been calibrated by the field rep, basically. I mean, it's not necessary that all these things are going to have to be used, but that they're available. You know, if that recording device ain't working and, you know, somehow they want to be able to make sure that that milk is cold. I mean, first thing they do obviously is call the field rep or the farm, but I think if we focus on that, these are items that should be available. I'm not necessarily sure that they have to be using them every time, depending on the situation, but I think, you know, any bulk milk weigher should have a thermometer just in case.
Okay. Marking device to identify the samples. And that includes labels. A label is a marking device. A watch or other timing device. And an adequate supply of forms and a writing device to prepare milk collection records. Here we go again. What if, and I've seen this also, what if they're all electronic? I've seen bulk milk weighers and samplers that come into the milk house, pull out their iPhone, record what farm they're at, or the iPhone has location detection and says you're at this farm, and record the temperature of the bulk tank, record the weight of the bulk tank. Do we need to say anything here with regard to supply of forms and writing devices?
Should it just be changed to state that there needs to be a way to record the necessary information, the milk collection records? And do away with the supply of forms and a writing device?
I was gonna say the same thing.
So I got rid of the adequate supply of forms and a writing device and just said an acceptable method to prepare milk collection records under sub 10.
Yes.
I wonder if under G, the watch or other timing device, you need to add something in there when bulk tank agitation is required to be timed or something like that.
All of these are supplies that refer to another section, basically.
Yes.
And so I don't think we need to repeat every time what they're for, because it's really just referencing the supplies you need to do something somewhere else in this chapter. to that point, I don't think you need to H at all. If you tell them they have to collect records, they have to collect records. Whether it's a pen and paper or an iPad, you're demanding they collect records, so they have to do it. And basically you're saying you can do it any way you want, so you're sort of saying nothing. An acceptable method will probably be questioned by the legal, saying that's unclear.
I like that a lot, John. That makes sense. Removing it if it's possible. I agree.
Okay.
And then there's this next one, an adequate supply of single service paper towels.
Why does the hauler need to supply single-use paper towels when they should be available at the farm?
Okay, so we've gotten through item 2. And as I said, we're going to go back through items 1 and 2.
Laura, on where it said about the thermometers and stuff,
Yes,
am I so out of touch? Do bulk tanks that are gonna be put on the farms that are already in the plants, don't they have petcocks? So then my question is, if you take a sample out of your bulk tank, out of the petcock, is that milk acceptable to do an antibiotic test or a thermometer check, or is it not?
as long as the tank, the silo has been properly agitated, you would be able to get an acceptable drug residue or temperature record.
And what is
But-
that limit? What is that limit for time of agitation?
Well,
20
there
minutes?
again, that
Yeah,
would be determined by the manufacturer of that tank.
yeah, no, it was just a question. I haven't been in a
Yep.
plant in a long time.
Yep. Yeah, most plants, their agitators are just running at a minimum speed constantly just to keep the milk in the tank constantly
Moving,
homogenized. Well, not homogenized, homogeneous.
yeah.
So, yeah, that's one of those things we're going to have to look at is, do we require in rule, once we start talking about silos on a farm, and that's ATCP 65, which is probably not going to be open for 3 to 5 years, but do we look at, when we get to 65, saying that if you're going to put a silo on the farm, that it needs to have a sample cock on it? But we are at 10:51. We are at something of a stopping point because we've gotten through paragraph 2. So I'll ask, what do we want to do as far as a next meeting date? as we are getting close to the holidays. So let me pull up the calendar. So we are here at the 7th. I cannot do anything the week of the 14th as we have our dairy section meeting next week. Probably shouldn't have said that because now you'll know that, hey, there aren't going to be any sanitarians out for a couple of days. 21st is Thanksgiving week, which is also hunting season week.
I could do the morning of the 21st, but maybe that doesn't work with everyone else.
I suspect there are at least a few hunters in this group.
This is Mick. I'm okay with the 21st.
I'm okay with it.
Tony,
I'm good with it.
Helen,
Works for me.
Andy,
That'll work for me.
John,
Before 3, okay?
oh, yeah, that would be the next thing we need to talk about. And because we would be hoping to get our guests from Ireland on the call, they would probably prefer it be 9 o'clock in the morning again.
Yeah,
If
I needed to be in the morning. 9 o'clock would be great.
That works for me.
Me too.
Okay. So Max, I will ask you to do your open meeting magic again to formally announce that the ATCP 82 group will be meeting Tuesday, November 21st at 9 a.m. Central Standard Time. So that our folks from Ireland and hopefully at least one of them will be able to make it. Any last comments, concerns? Last minute, oh, I want to go back and look at this section kinds of things.
I just have a comment that I think it was great. We covered, I feel like even though it didn't seem like we covered a lot, I feel like we did.
Yeah, we covered some very difficult sections. You know, we got the one section completely done. We got another section where we started laying some base work. The next thing we're going to get into, and I'll forewarn you all that we're going to get into this, is talking about the bulk milk weighers and samplers and who needs to be a licensed bulk milk weigher and sampler when we start talking about inline devices on the farm. Does everyone on the farm who touches an inline sampling device need to be a licensed bulk milk weigher and sampler? Because the test they would take has nothing to do with what they do in real life on the farm. And that's going to be a major topic of discussion of, you know, who are we going to require to be a bulk milk weigher and sampler when they're pulling a sample from a device that has been set up by the farmer?
Laura, I am curious if you're saying New York has had good success with the inline samplers. I'm just curious, do they have that situation? And if they do, what have they determined? And maybe you don't know that. I'm just curious for what you just previewed.
Okay. I've talked with Casey McHugh and Chris Hilkema
Yeah.
pretty extensively on these inline samplers. What
Okay.
they are doing is they are not requiring the farm employee who takes the needle out of the aseptic package and sticks it into the septum to be a licensed bulk milk weigher and sampler. This goes against all of the FDA MIs with regard to inline samplers. All of the FDA MIs say everyone who handles any part of this inline sampler must be a licensed bulk milk weigher and sampler. New York is not doing that. What New York is saying is there needs to be some folks on the farm who are licensed bulk milk weighers and samplers who come in and check to make sure that the device is set up properly. And then either the farmer, who is probably going to be one of those licensed bulk milk weighers and samplers, or the licensed bulk milk weigher and sampler who comes to the farm to pick up the milk, is going to take, some of these have a large 1 liter, 2 liter bag, is going to agitate that bag and pull the samples. They need to be a licensed bulk milk weigher and sampler. But as far as who puts the needle into the septum at the start of milking, this is mostly direct ship loads right now. They are not saying that those people need to be permitted as bulk milk weighers and samplers, and they have not had major problems with their survey enforcement scores. And that's one of the things that I've got the MSROs digging into right now, is how will it impact our enforcement scores? Because we've already been told by our milk specialist that they will enforce the requirement that everyone who handles that device be licensed. And so how will that impact our enforcement scores? And will that cause a problem for the entire dairy industry as a whole, if our enforcement scores start failing because we're not enforcing that part of the FDA rule?
Okay. Wow, there's a lot there. Thank you.
Yeah, so I'm hoping that at the next meeting or the meeting after that, I will be able to come back with some data that says, and what I'm hearing right now is that it should not be a problem for our multi-farm BTUs, but it may be a problem for a single farm BTU.
Okay.
Laura, do you think there's any stomach at the NCIMS to kind of lead this instead of follow the PMO and get two big states moving in one direction? And
well, let's put it this way. Casey McHugh is currently the chair of the NCIMS Executive Board. So does that tell you if there's stomach? There is definitely stomach there to bring the NCIMS into the 21st century. The problem is they would either need to do a mid-conference special meeting, or we'll have to wait until after the 2025 conference and just take our licks in the meantime.
well, these rules take 2 years anyway,
Mm-hmm.
frankly. So timing is everything.
I have to leave for another meeting. Thank you all.
Okay, thanks, Brandon. Anyone else have anything else? It is 1 minute after 11 o'clock.
I have to go too. Thank you.
Okay, thank you all very much. And we'll talk to you again in 2 weeks.
Thank you all. Have a good day.
Thanks.